Hi everybody, welcome back to Dr. B's Advice to the World. I'm Dr. Anita Blanchard and this is my channel where I'm going to provide hopefully useful information about life in academia, in parenthood, and generally life in general. We're in my home office, which is not as glamorous as my dining room, but it's a little easier for me to get set up here, so I hope that it works out for a while. Okay, today's topic is when should you have a baby as an academic? Light, easy discussion here. So I'm going to start off with two big caveats. First, you don't need to have a baby, okay? If you do not feel compelled to have a child, there is no need to have a child. I do not know a single person who told me when they were younger that they didn't want to have children, but somehow ended up having a child later, didn't feel extremely ambivalent about it. So they love their child, but they really wish they'd held on to their early beliefs. So you do not need to have a child. But if you do, when should you have one? The next question I'd like to say is, or question to ask you is, are you a man? Because pretty much you can have them anytime you want. I don't want that to sound flippant, but honestly, the challenges of having a child and like bearing, carrying the child while you're pregnant, and then breastfeeding and all of that stuff later, it's a bit of a difference. Even though I know that currently today's generation, men and women are both very involved in parenting, and I think that's wonderful. And also women, mamas are involved, two mamas are involved, two daddies are involved. It's a different world, so it just have to be man, woman. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about. So I'm going to start with what I have seen as far as, starting with grad school versus postdocs versus on the tenure track, but not tenured and after the tenure track, because I've done the latter two. If you have experiences in grad school or postdoc, please let me know. We can have some discussions based on what I hear about that. So as far as what I know about women who have their children in graduate school, it really depends on how supportive the program is. I've seen one student who was able to keep her funding, who was able to take some independent reading classes and work on her thesis, and got a lot of support from the department to have her child and continue to be a graduate student in good standing. I've also known of people who were asked 4 weeks after they gave birth why they were not back in the office doing work. That would be an example of not having a lot of support from their faculty mentor. So it really does depend on where you are and who's being supportive. As far as postdocs, that's probably where I know the least information. So I'm interested to hear what the experience was for women who give birth during their postdoc. I think it's probably very variable depending again on how supportive the program is. I also know that NSF and NIH do not provide funded FMLA on their projects. And when you've been funded a 2-year project, they expect all hands on deck for 2 years, whether or not someone's had a child. And so that's what I'm interested to see, how people were able to negotiate that. Well, what about tenure track? Okay, so I had my first child before I had tenure, and I had the twins after I had tenure, both obviously on the tenure track. Well, you should have more protections when you're on the tenure track. At our university, we get a semester off to take care of our child, and if you time that around the summer, so if you have the baby at the beginning of the summer, you get to stay off through December, or if you have the baby in December or January, you get to stay off until August. That should, and you get a year off the tenure clock. Did I say that? That is good. That's better than most organizations do, which I think is horrible. It's one benefit. I'm glad we do it at universities, but every organization should have that. And if you do not have that, I'm going to be ugly and say that you are not working for a university that gives a crap about women. Okay? You can say what you want, and the organization can say what it wants, but if they don't give you those sort of benefits, I sincerely doubt whether they are women-friendly organizations. And by the way, for people who don't know this, male professors can also take that semester off as part of their FMLA support. And I strongly recommend you to do it, because I'll say something else. If you're in a department where the men don't take their semester off, but the women do, that makes it a women's issue, and it's not particularly a women-friendly organization. So the organizations I like most are ones where the pressure is for both parents to take time off from their semester off and or their tenure clock off, so they can support their young children. Also, while it's wonderful to have that semester off, pregnancy feels to me like a 2-year process. I feel like you're pregnant for a year, which I know isn't true. It's only 10 months, 40 weeks. It's weird pregnancy math. As soon as you start your cycle, you're a week pregnant. By the time you find out you're pregnant, you're at least 4 weeks pregnant, so you're a month pregnant. It's bull. I have to feel there's some sort of sexism there that doctors can't count when you actually know when you got pregnant, or blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so if you had any time, usually you don't get pregnant the first month, people, especially if you're in your 30s trying to get pregnant. It doesn't happen the first month, so there may be some emotional months beforehand where you're trying to get pregnant and you're not. Then you finally get pregnant, and then all of the physical things start happening. My heart rate went up to 90 while I was brushing my teeth. It's a normal thing. I mean, I was very athletic, so I had an idea of what my heart rate was for a variety of things, but generally it didn't go up to 90 when I brushed my teeth. So there's lots of things that happen physically while you're pregnant. Your brain shrinks. They say that's not a problem, but it kind of makes me go blah. And you're emotional or excited. You're a bit freaked out, and that's before you get your before you have your child, before you go on your maternity leave or your parental leave. My biggest piece of advice, if you are pregnant right now, or you know someone's going to get pregnant, or when you get pregnant, is that you should write and research like a rabid Wolverine during the time you're pregnant, okay? Focus, get it out. Because if this is your first child, you have no freaking idea how tired you're going to be after you give birth. I swear, it is not possible to understand. Those first 4 months after giving birth, when we're on leave, and it's supposed to be leave, right? Lots of fun. You're sleeping, you're catching up, you're reading, maybe take some art classes at the local community college, all things I thought I would be doing. Those first 4 months are freaking hard. I actually think the first 6 months are hard. Those first 4 months, those first 6 weeks are hard. There's no sleep. You don't shower. You're breastfeeding around the clock, which not everybody has to do. That's fine. I really liked breastfeeding. It was a goal for me. But you're doing it around the clock with my son every 45 minutes. It was freaking crazy. And there's just a lot of bizarre crying going on. Also, the kid does some crying. You knew that was coming. But yeah, it is those first 6 months. Maternity leave was not a leave. It was a maternity boot camp while I was out trying to just keep my shite from exploding. Okay, so that's kind of tough. And then it continues. I have to tell you this, it continues. The first 2 years after you've given birth, your child is pretty much swimming in the daycare germ pool. Okay, that's great for their immunity, but the whole family is getting sick all the time. You've got to take off research. You've got to take off time from work. You've got to help them. You're not sleeping through the night. Every time they make a progression developmentally, they stop sleeping. It's like, oh, look, I can sit up in the crib. I'm not going to sleep tonight. I can say 4 words. I'm not going to sleep tonight. It's like, really? Dude, I'm happy for you, but just get back to sleep. And all that time, when you're on the tenure clock, you still need to be doing research. You guys know when you're on the tenure clock, you're working long hours. And with a child, that doesn't stop. It just means that, like my friend and I used to do, he'd be frantically rocking them to sleep, going, go to sleep, I have to do work, sleep. And that's really conducive to relaxing yourself and relaxing the child so they can just drift off to sleep. You're go to sleep. So yeah, that is a little bit of a challenge. So for me, it was a lot easier work-wise when I gave birth after tenure. Because I didn't have to worry about, was I going to keep my job, and I have to get all this research out. That said, when I was pregnant, I shot book chapters and journals out left and right. I was a ravenous Wolverine writing. But if you wait to tenure, I'm going to be honest with you, you're likely to have more infertility issues than you are if you go before tenure. And then that's a whole other piece of crap you have to deal with. Just note, the university system was developed in the freaking Middle Ages. Hasn't really changed a lot. Back in the Middle Ages, maternity leave was not such a big idea for professors. Okay, I'm just going to say that. So, there. It's the first conversation on this. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if it makes any sense or relates at all to how you feel about things. As you know, this, as I've said, and I'll continue to say, this is all advice. That's all I got to give you. My experiences that may or may not work for you, but hopefully we can start a conversation. If you have any discussion you want to add, or some questions or comments, you can leave them where you find this, or leave it in here in the below. I know you're supposed to do that, and they make fun of it now, but I'm still going to do it. You can subscribe so you can find out. It's been a while since my last post because end of school, summer, traveling, blah blah blah. Anyway, weekly is what we're hoping for this to do. Okay, I appreciate your feedback, and I thank you, and hope to see you again next week. Bye now.